Hi! On this video we will discuss how to build a new repeater inside the home page to display the first image of each design on the design table. We will also see how to make the image thumbnails responsive to fit with any monitor size or device. Then we will discuss how to center the image perfectly inside a wrapper div regardless the difference in dimension proportions between the image and the div, even when the user resizes the window. So let's go ahead and start. First of all, let's copy the images that we are going to use in this tutorial to our project's image folder. Okay, so we are going to use those three images: star on big, star off big, and then no image.jpg. Okay, now let's return to Visual Studio and let's create first a new folder called CSS. Now let's add a new cascading style sheet file called default, so it will carry the extension CSS, and this default file will be linked to our default.aspx file. So let's copy a link here. Let's also plug the bootstrap. The bootstrap is already plugged, but I will add a reference here in order for the IntelliSense to be helpful. So bootstrap min.css, and I will add also the font awesome, and all of those styles should be added before the default.css in order, to be able to override any style inside the previous CSS plugins. Now let's open Notepad and copy those styles here and paste them inside default.css. Okay, now let's save and let's go back to default.aspx, and let's add a div element beneath the jumbotron has the ID of div designs. Okay, so this div will have those styles here. Okay, now let's add a repeater and an SQL data source inside the div designs. So first I will add a repeater here by double click it and give it the name of repeater designs, and below the repeater I will add an SQL data source, or directly you can click here and click on new data source and give it the name SQL repeater designs and click on OK. Choose the default connection, then click on next. Okay, specify a custom SQL or stored procedure and click on query builder, and then select the design table and the design file table. So as you remember from the previous video, we have two tables here: the design table, which has the design ID, linked to the design file, which has also a field called design ID as a foreign key. So each design here has several files. This file might be an image or anything else. So in this case we want only the first file for each design that got the sort index of 1 and the category of image to be displayed as thumbnail. So in order to do that, I will select the design ID field, design name, design number, description, and the area, of course. And from the design file I will select the icon URL. I will put a few conditions here. So the first condition, that visibility has to be set to true. So we have some visible designs and other non-visible designs. The non-visible designs are the designs under preparation by the website administration, and for sure they are not ready for publish. So visible has to be filtered by 1. It has to be ordered according to the sort index. Sort type here is ascending. That's all for the condition here. For the condition here, I want the sort index to be equal to 1. So it will display only the first image on the list, and this image and this file has to carry the category of n image. Okay, so the n is for the Unicode, so in case you write with any language rather than English, it will result in no problem. So if you click OK here and click on next, then test the query, there is an error here, command if present. So in order to figure out what is the reason of that error, let's copy this SQL code here and paste it and try to run from SQL Server. Okay, we have a lot of records here. It's supposed to be only 9 records instead of 13. So let's figure out what's the problem. Design file.category. We have another condition here that the sort index has to be equal to 1. Yes, that's right. So let's copy back this code and paste it here. Now if you click on test query, it's okay. However, if we count the number of records here, we will find that we have only 8 records, whereas if we revise the design table, we will find that we have a total number of 9 designs. So why this happen? If you notice here, the record number 9 or the design number 9 has no related files inside the file table. So there is no design ID here called 9. Therefore, it will not be displayed at all. Why? Because we are using here on this query the inner join. So instead of the inner join, we could use either the outer join or the subquery. So I will prefer here to use the subquery. Let's delete this table and let's add here. By the way, the area here, if you notice for the design, the area here could be null. So I want to handle the case when the area is null to be written as 0. So there is a cool function here for SQL language called isNull. So if the area is null, it will return 0 and this field will be called as area. And let's write now a subquery which has the following syntax: select icon URL from data.design file as df. So by now df represents the alias of the design file table, where df.design id equals data.design.design id. So I refer here to the main table. So the main table is data.design.design id. There is also another condition. I will type here select top 1 icon URL order by df.sortIndex. So this code is more smarter than typing here select icon URL where sort index equals 1, because there might be only one file which has a sort index equals 0. So in this case it will return nothing. As icon URL. Okay, so let's click on OK, let's click on next and test the query. Okay, now design number 9 is displayed and has the area of 0. However, it has no icon URL here. So let's go back and guess what? I will use the same isNull function. So isNull, and the second parameter will be tilde images no image dot jpg. Okay, the images we have just copied at the beginning of the video to our images folder. So let's click OK, let's click on next, let's test the query. Now design number 9, design ID number 9 has this icon URL. Okay, so this is our table. Let's click on finish And that's all for the SQL data source. Let's go ahead and design our repeater. So if you go to the code behind page, and inside the repeater I will add the item template, and go to Notepad and copy this markup and paste it here. Control K, Control D, and let's save the project, and I will discuss after a moment how did I design this item template. Let's first rebuild our project and go to the default.aspx and view in browser. Okay, now our page is ready. So this is our repeater here, and by the way, you can notice here that there is a line that we haven't added yet. So let's right click here and inspect. Okay, this line seems to be the dev design. The dev design is supposed to hold all of those elements here. However, it's displayed as a collapsed div. So the reason behind that if you right click here and inspect any div which carries a class panel product, you will notice here that those divs has a float property set to left. So when the div element carries another div element which has a float set to left or set to right, whatever, it will get collapsed at the end. So in order to fix that, all you have to do is adding the bootstrap class called clear fix. Okay, so refresh our page. Now everything is displayed properly. You can notice that when I resize my window, those elements here are responsive. So if you are aware with the bootstrap plugin classes, you know that we have a total number of 12 columns per div. Therefore, if you want to divide your div element into 4 portions in case of the middle-sized monitor or higher, you have to assign the class call md3. In other words, when 12 got divided by 3, the result will be equal to 4. In the same fashion, if you want to divide the div element into 2 partitions in case of extra small monitor size and higher, you have to assign the class call xs6. Also notice that I haven't assigned the class row to the wrapper div element. As anybody aware with the Bootstrap plugin knows that if you intend to assign any of the call classes family to the child div elements, the parent element has to get the class row assigned to it. So let's see why I haven't assigned the class row to the parent div element. As if we try to assign it, that would be the result. The div contents will touch exactly the boundary of our page, and the border of the div element has to flow out of our page's limits. So if you remove the border, it will appear like that. This is okay if you don't want a border, but since we want a border, I had to remove the class row from here. Okay, now let's see the contents of each panel product here. If we right click inspect, we will see that every panel product consists of 3 div elements. The first div element is a div element which holds the design number and the design name. The second div element has only one hyperlink inside, which in return has our thumbnail image located inside. Whereas the last div element carries the area in addition to m square. It also contains the hyperlink responsible for adding this design to the current user's favorites list, as we will see in a future video. So if we go back to our design here, this is the first div element which carries the design name, and it has a title of the description. So when you hover over the design name, you should see here the description. Since this design has no description, it will not appear. This design has a description. Now let's discuss how to display the tooltip for the design name and the add to favorites hyperlink in a better way using the Bootstrap Tooltip plugin. The first thing I will do here is that I will add a new folder called JS and add a new file inside it called default.js. Then plug this file to our default.aspx. So let's plug this file here. Okay, now inside the default.js I will type the following. On page load, do the following. So if you right click here and inspect, this div element has the class of div design name. So let's copy the class name and paste it here. So each element has the class name of div design name. Also each element has the class of hyper add to favorite. Will get the tooltip plugin assigned to it. Okay, now let's save all. Let's refresh our page. Okay, you can see now that when you hover over the design name, it will give you the design description. If you hover over the add to favorites, it will give you the tooltip that has been added to it. However, you might get surprised to know that the plugin responsible for this phenomena was not the Bootstrap tooltip plugin. It was the jQuery UI tooltip plugin instead. As both plugins has a function called tooltip, and both plugin is plugged to the site.master page and hence accessible by all the pages inside our website. So in order to use the Bootstrap tooltip instead of the jQuery UI tooltip, just comment this line. Now if we click on save all and refresh our page here, you will find that the Bootstrap plugin has been used instead. Now the add to favorites tooltip works perfectly, whereas the design description doesn't. Sometimes the Bootstrap tooltip plugin fails to be applied over div elements. So let's right click here, inspect, and let's refer to the span instead of the containing div element. So if we write the span name, sometimes it acts weird. So let's refresh again. And yeah, now it's working. Now I think it's time to discuss how I displayed the image here and how to enhance the image display inside each div element. So to place an image inside a div element that has a different width to height proportions comparing to the image, there are 3 different ways to do that. The first way is to fit both the image's width and height to its wrapper div's width and height. So if you have an image like this one and you want to fit it, for example, inside this div element which has a square proportions, that will be the result. And that would be the worst solution any developer or designer could come up with. The second alternative solution is to fit one image's dimension, for example the height, to the div's dimension and let the other dimensions determined automatically while setting the div's overflow property to hidden. For example, if we have this image that should be fitted inside this div element, by fitting the height only inside the height of the div element and let the width determined automatically, this image will be displayed like this, whereas the rest of the image will be hidden. And again, remember that if you want to hide the remaining portion of the image, you have to set the CSS overflow property of its parent div to hidden. The third alternative will be to display the middle portion of the image instead of displaying the first portion. So from the previous slide, we have fitted the height of the image inside the height of the div element, whereas keep the rest of the image hidden from display. We can see here that only a small part of the image is displayed and it's not representative for the image. In order to be representative, maybe we want to display the middle of the image inside this div element. So in order to achieve that, we will have to move the image to the left side with a distance equals half the width of the image's hidden portion. And in order to know how to calculate the amount the image has to move in pixels, let's say that we have an image which has an original width of 300 pixels and original height of 150 pixels. This image, we want to fit it inside a div element which has a 100 pixels height and 100 pixels width. So when we fit the height to the height of the div element, the modified image height will be 100 pixels. And since the height got decreased, the image's width has to be decreased accordingly. So the modified image width will be equal to the modified image height over the original image height, which is 150 pixels, multiplied by original image width, which is 300 pixels. So 100 pixels is the modified image height over 150 pixels, which is the original image height, multiplied by 300, which is the original width, equals 200 pixels. Therefore, the amount of pixels the image has to move to the left side equal to the depth width, which is 100 pixels, minus modified image width, which is the 200 pixels, over 2 equals negative 50 pixels. So let's see how to do that programmatically. Right now, the image has a height of 100%. Height of 100% means since the div product image has a height of 200 pixels, the image currently has a height of 200 pixels. But what about the width of the div product image? Don't forget that our page is responsive, so the width varies whenever we modify the monitor size. So in order to calculate how much exactly the CSS left attribute of the image, the first step is to know the image's original dimension before it fits its height to its parent's div height. To do that, let's go to the code behind page and let's add here two functions. So the first one is, we can write public, we can write protected image width, and this function has a parameter called icon URL as string, and this function will return an integer value, which is the width in pixels. So I will add the try clause here in order to avoid any errors, and instead of them I will use the using clause system.drawing.image equals system.drawing.image from file, which file server.mappath our icon URL, okay, and return the image dot width. Okay, let's do the same thing here. Okay, if we encounter an error here, I will return the width of 100. Okay, let's copy the function here and paste it, and this time image height, okay, and return the image dot height. Okay, now let's go to the default.aspx, and for our image here I will add a new property called data width equals the image width function of eval of icon URL. Okay, and I will add also data height, which is equal to image height of eval of icon URL. Now let's rebuild our solution. Let's now refresh our page and let's see what we have got here. So inspect. Okay, data width equals 641 pixels and data height equals 352 pixels. Let's go to the default.js and let's add a new function here to shift each image inside this page to the left side with the proper value. So in order to do that, we have to first, if we inspect this image here and type here, for example, left equals -40, this will do nothing. Why? Because we haven't set the position for this image. So I will have to set the position to relative. So it will shift the image from its current position relatively by -40 pixels. So I will type here style equals position and set the position to relative. Okay, save all. Of course nothing will happen because we haven't set the left value for any image. Now let's go to our JavaScript file and let's see how to do that using JavaScript. First, I will define a function here called adjust thumbnail position. So function adjust thumbnail position. Okay, and for each product image, so this image has a class of product image. So for each product image, what will happen? Var original image width equals this dot data of width. Okay, we will also define a new variable called original image height equals this dot data height, and I will define also a variable called modified height will be equal to 200, because the height of 200 is fixed here for all the div elements inside the page. Okay, var modified image width. So the modified image width will have the following equation: original image width times modified height over original image height. Okay, now the parent width, which is div elements width, so parent width, so I will type here var parent width equals parse integer of this, which is the image, dot closest, so it will search for a parent which has a element name of div, so dot css width value. So because every time we resize, this width got resized accordingly. Now let's type var have margin equals parent width minus modified image width over 2, and finally this .css left has the value of, okay, have margin plus pixels. Okay, so in order for this function to work, I will have to type here on the page load this function. Now let's save all and let's go back here and refresh our page. Okay, now it's good, but when you try to resize your window, it will display the image on the wrong way again. So let's add here an event, so when the window dot resize occur, run the following function. This is why I have written all of these codes inside the function in order to call it whenever I want. So adjust thumbnail position, brackets, save all, and let's refresh again our page. Now let's resize our window. Perfect. Whenever we resize, the function will run and adjust our image's position. At the current moment, when you click on any design here, this will guide you to another page called design.aspx and has a query string of the design ID. Okay, now I want to add a hyperlink here by which it will create a new design and give it an ID and redirect you to the design.aspx in order to add image and so on. So let's see how to do that. I will go here and copy this panel. This panel has almost the same markup like the other panels with some little differences. So if you go here and go to design.aspx and immediately after the repeater finishes, I will paste this code. So this code has also the panel add product and so on. So let's save all and let's refresh our page. Okay, the most important element here inside this new panel is that link button. I have added here a link button called link add product, and inside it I put the plus sign, which is a span element, has the class fa dash plus, Now let's go to the code behind page and write the code that will run whenever you click the link add product. So F7, and let's find the link add product and the click command, and let's type the following code. Now before we type anything, I will set the visibility for this panel to false. So visible equal false, as I don't want any regular member to be able to add a new product except the admin. Okay, so I will type here if user dot is enroll admin, then what will happen? Panel add product dot visible equals true. And sorry, this should not be added here. This should be added on the page load. On the link add product click, I will define something called DB as entities 101 designs. Now we can start benefiting from the entity framework we have just created on the previous video, and write few lines of code without having first to go into the long process of creating a lot of data access layer and business logic layer classes. So I will start by type dim my design as new design. So I will define also a something called last design number equals from d in db dot designs select d. I will type here max of function m dot design number, and I will type here dim last sort index equals almost the same sort index. My design dot visible equal true, and the design number will be set to last design number plus 1, and the sort index last sort index plus 1, and the design name will be by default new design until the creator decides the final design's name. My design dot publish date equals now. My design dot user ID equals user dot identity dot get user ID, and of course for this function to work you will have to import here Microsoft dot ASP.NET dot identity. Okay, db dot designs dot add my design db dot save changes. Then the last step, I will have to redirect the admin to the page which we haven't created yet, which calls the design.aspx, which has the query string of id equals to my design dot design id. Okay, now let's rebuild our project. Let's refresh our page. Now since I didn't log with an admin account, I don't find the add product here, so I will log in with 101 designs manager at gmail.com 123 login. Okay, now let's add a new design here. It seems that I have done a little mistake here, maybe by missing the word new. Now let's rebuild again. Let's go back. Let's click here on the plus sign. Okay, here we go. It created a new design and give it the ID of 10. And if we refresh our page now, we have a new design name called the new design. Now let's actually remove this record here. Now one thing last to discuss here, which is the publish date. As when you type the function now in the code behind page, this function will return the current date and time for the server's machine. So if you plan to publish your website later inside a foreign server like smarterasp.net or arvex.com, while your website serves customers living in a different country rather than USA, with a time difference equals, for example, 11 hours, you have to take this time shift into consideration in your code. For example, I will type now.add hours 11. But in case you intend to repeatedly use this function inside your application, it would be a better idea to define this shift amount globally over your application. In order, if the time when you want to change this value comes, all you have to do is to change it in one place. To do that, let's create a new class that should hold all of our application's global values, called, for example, application configuration. Click on the add, and then I will define a new property here. So the new property will be called time shift from server, and this will have underscore t, and the new property will get time shift from server, and this will be a read only. So I will add the read only property here, and there will be no variable, no set here, and I will return here only 0. So during the development process, I will keep this variable as 0, and once I publish my website into another server, I will set it to 11. So instead of writing here 11, I will write application configuration dot time shift from server. I have to add a shared here, public shared, which is equivalent to static inside C#, and I will go here to type application configuration dot time shift from server and save all. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please press like.